Welcome to your Magical Life podcast.
A sacred space to explore, create, and manifest more magic into your daily life.
I'm Crystal, homeschool mom to 2 wildlings and lover of all things witchy and magical.
And I'm Ash, your resident art witch and priestess, helping you trust your intuition through art and divination. Hey, welcome back to the show, Crystal. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing awesome. Thank you. How are you doing, Ash?
I'm doing great. I'm excited we got here. We're going to dive right into the deep stuff. So we've got our first few episodes already recorded, edited, ready to go. And now we're getting into the main stuff here.
That is awesome. I am excited for today's content. Excited and a little
Me too.
nervous. I don't know why.
That's okay to be nervous. Like I said, we're jumping right into the deep stuff. Forget about the basics. Let's just go for the harder topics.
All right. So what are we talking about today, Ash?
We're talking about shadow work today. So let's get started with first, what is shadow work for you?
All right. So, shadow work to me is basically looking at your whole self. As we know, there's light, there's dark. When you have a bright light, it casts a shadow. And something I read just earlier today is the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. And so we all have this within us. There is not one person who's all light. There's not one person who's all shadow. And so we all have this within ourselves. And so shadow work is to really look at ourselves in a loving, compassionate, understanding way and embrace all parts of ourselves, even, or I should even say, especially the parts that we deem unlovable, the parts that we deem you know, ugly, those parts that we don't want to look at, that we have shame, we have guilt, judgment of ourselves or from other people. These could be childhood wounds. They could be inner teen wounds. They could be things that have happened, traumatic events throughout our life. And even if you've had a great life, you still have a shadow, things that you would rather not take a look at. And so when we're talking about shadow work, it can be messy. It can be a lot of tears. It can be deeply heartbreaking to look at traumatic, dig up the stuff that's trauma for you. But it can also be such a beautiful act of self love and compassion by accepting and loving all of yourself. So to me, that's what shadow work is in a nutshell, is just to look at yourself, your whole self, the light and the dark, and to love the light and the dark. And to really also, I think a big part of why we do shadow work is that we are all living, with an ego, that really, kind of runs the show. They think the ego thinks it knows what's best for it. It thinks it's trying to protect us. For example, oh, I had this traumatic event. Therefore, I want my person to not experience any more pain. It's trying to protect us and says, well, this is a trigger. You know what's happened in the past, Crystal? Well, when you had a fight with this person, they said this, and then you acted this way. So you better protect yourself. And they always act this way, and so you're triggered. So when we talk about triggers in shadow work, I think that's how they tie in. And so we do shadow work so that we're not as triggered. We can step back from a calmer space and say, oh, that's a trigger. That is, something that has happened in the past. It is not happening in my present. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen in the future, but I can look at this element of my life now and know that I'm being triggered. And then therefore I can um, come to the world from a more healed space. And my relationships are going to be better. And just my relationship with myself is going to be better as well. So that's what I think. What about you, Ad?
That's you. You have a way with words as always. That was perfect. I love that description of it, especially towards the beginning. You said if if you have a really bright light, then it's going to be a really dark shadow. Like the bigger the light, the darker the shadow. There we go. That's what you said. I love that because yeah, if we've done a lot of work on ourselves already and we're vibrant and talkative and out there and like letting ourselves be seen, then there's gonna be things in that shadow that we have yet to work through. So for me, shadow work is yeah, being able to look at that shame, that guilt, that there's things that um some people might call embarrassing or feel like, "Ah, I wish no one knew that." Being
Yeah.
able to look at that stuff and love it. It's not about loving yourself in spite of it. It's about loving yourself with it, because of it. And I like to say, like, being able to walk hand in hand with your fears or hand in hand with your shadow. Um, you know, because if we haven't done the shadow work yet, then we're trying to hide it. We're trying to sweep it under the rug, ignore it, and then it's just like getting bigger. It's just getting worse and harder to handle. So if we actually take some time to dedicate to looking at it, to working with it, and to loving it, then it is not as it's not as hard to handle. It's much easier to walk with your shadows if you can accept them and say, "Yep, I got all these issues, and I'm still good."
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like, this can be a very private process, something you do on your own. Could be something you share with a close friend, like we are doing, or it could be part of a group setting as well. I am currently in a shadow work masterclass or workshop. I don't know what you call it, with a woman named Kristen that I just randomly connected with on TikTok. I was spirit completely guided us and you know, put her on my path and her on mine, and I, as you can hear, am well versed in shadow work, have done my own shadow work, have read Journey to the Dark Goddess and gone down into the underworld and given up everything, surrendered myself. Highly recommend that book. I'll drop it in the comments. And it, but I've done my own shadow work. However, sometimes your ego will not allow you because it's trying to protect you to look at what you really need to look at to open and unblock yourself to then energetically move on. And I felt that way. I felt like I've done a lot of work on my own, but I needed an outside person to kind of just help me shine that light, focus it on the deepest parts that I really, really, really didn't wanna look at, and so, if anybody is interested, I'm gonna drop her email address below. It's hellosunshine212 at Gmail, and she's doing, wonderful shadow work workshops if you feel that you need additional support. However, you do not need to go do a group shadow work, sometimes just regular talk therapy or medically assisted, mushrooms, whatever, you know what I mean? Like hypnotherapy. There's all sorts of options for you to really dive in um, to your shadow and look at it. But one of the best ways that I looked at my shadow was actually one of your card creator coven workshops on shadow work. And I swear, the practices that you gave me were life changing, and I still do them to this day. So I really would love you to share with our listeners more about your process of how you use creativity to dive into the shadow.
Yeah, I would love to share because that was a powerful workshop for me too, and I was the one leading it.
Yeah.
Um, so when I do a shadow workshop like that, or when I do it for myself too, Side note, I love that you said that it can be a personal practice like this, yet we're um, broadcasting this podcast to many people.
Right.
So, not at all personal practice here. But when I do a workshop or do this for myself, I take something that I know has been triggering me. Maybe it's something that someone said about me or something that's come up that like really upset me, or maybe I don't even know what it is yet, but I know that I'm going to sit down, dedicate this time to shadow work to uncover what it is. Um, if I'm feeling energetically off. Um, and then I take that time to meditate on it, to like go to what's the worst possible thing from this happening. Um, I feel like I need an example here, but
Yes,
that's okay.
please, I would love.
Um, let's see. What do I want to share as an example publicly? Because we're not talking privately.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Um, okay, so we'll do this one.
Ooh,
So, and I'm showing a card. This is an artwork I created, which we'll get here. So I kept having these dreams about snakes. And they were not comfortable dreams about snakes.
can you show the card really
Um,
quick one more time? And, we'll
yeah.
describe it for our listeners, who are not
Oh,
seeing this on
sure.
YouTube.
That makes sense. So this is one of the cards I created. It's got so it's a 3.5 by 5 card, with a snake painted on it and drawn on it, like a rattlesnake. And the snake is just swirling around on the card. You'll be able to see it all on Instagram. Maybe we can post pictures on Instagram when the episode airs.
Love it.
Um, so I was having lots of dreams about snakes. It was like, what? This is uncomfortable. Like, I can't deal with any more snake dreams where like everyone's getting bitten by a snake. Right? Like, no one wants that. So that was the time when I needed to sit down, do some shadow work, figure out what is going on here. So I would go into meditation. I would write down what I was experiencing in those dreams, like how I was feeling, how the people around me were feeling. And I did some research too of like what um, I can put in the show notes to the book that I love for looking at animals that come to you. And so, I read what snakes mean for that as well, which is transformation, shedding the skin, shedding layers, and going deeper. And so I do the meditation, I write down everything that's coming up, like start putting together little pieces, of what's been going on in my life, like what am I ready to let go of, what's transforming in my life. And then when I feel like I've gotten through all of that, then I start putting it onto paper. Um, and so that's how I use the creativity in my practice. I know I went off on a
I love
slight
it.
tangent before I got back to the creativity
That's
part.
okay.
Um,
I love how you brought
so
in your
one time,
dreams.
yeah, that's a huge part of my practice too, because that's like the subconscious or like our higher self speaking to us, without our conscious mind saying, nope, that's not right. That's not real. So I use dreams a lot. But the creativity comes through once I have done the meditation, once I have written it out, once I've figured out, why these things are coming through or coming up right now. And then I get it out onto paper. So like this card and all my other cards in my deck, I draw it out. So in this case, it was as simple as a snake. Sometimes it's more abstract or color based, or um, sometimes I have to make up the picture. In this case, I was just drawing the snake that I um, kept seeing in my dreams. But sometimes you might have to get a little bit more creative or outside the box with what you actually put down. But getting it out onto paper is what takes it to the next level, because then you can actually see your shadows. You can physically see them in front of your face. And that is what takes it to the next level so that you can like really work through it. You can look at it and like start to let your heart rate slow down and relax and be like, okay, I can see this thing. It's okay. Still okay. Everything is fine. I will get through the next transformation, or I will shed this next layer, or get rid of this thing that's not working for me. But at being able to see it on paper in front of you is more than just words, really changed the game for me when I started doing that, to be able to work through my shadows.
Thank you so much, Ash. And I would just like to reiterate everything you said is so true. And this is coming from a non artist. I know you say everyone is an artist, but I think art comes naturally to you. Art, is not as natural to me. However, um, there is something so magical about your process because I've done so many of the meditations, either guided or just on my own. And journals, again, with a prompt or without a prompt, free writing, whatever, I've done all of those different things, but you meditate, you journal, and then you're done. Usually that's the end of the process. But adding in your element of then creating a card, and you and I are card lovers, and so cards seem natural to us, but this could literally, I mean, be on the back of a napkin or a big oil painting, or, I mean, it could be any form of art that you feel called to. It could be rock painting, whatever it is. But you know, taking the meditation, what you've learned, journaling it out onto paper if you like, and then distilling it into images that then it just grounds the message. It actually lets it out. Instead of keeping it in, it then moves through your body into your hands and out into something that is tangible. That is tangible here. And I say I'm not an artist, but look what I did. I'd say that's pretty awesome. Like, I was so proud of all my cards. I was like, look at you go. I felt accomplished, and not that all of them are, so beautiful. You know what I mean? Some are, much more simple, feeling your emotions rather than letting them explode. This was one that was really, important for me. I was shoving down all my feelings, not speaking my truth. My throat chakra was closed. And I saw that wounding. I saw that trigger. I meditated on it, but actually putting it onto this card as a volcano. Now I have this along with like a whole, bunch of them that I've been doing. I have a deck, and I can look at it throughout the day. I visually remember as I come into a situation where that trigger's happening, and I either have a chance to shove it in, and then later it's going to explode, or to speak my truth in the moment, which is something I'm working on. Um I I brought up this feel it card to mind, or as I'm shuffling, like maybe it's later and I'm like, oh, what do I need to work on today? Oh, feel it. Like that's going to come up today. And I can really, it's not a deck that, I mean, all my decks are great. These are beautiful cards, but these, they come from someone else's brain, someone else's shadow, someone else's, and we are all connected and have similar experiences, but no one is just like you and can create something that means what it does to you.
Yeah, and I have decks that I love too. So like I'm by no means saying you can't make your own deck and love other people's decks because every one of the decks has a place. But I think that when you do a meditation and like journal it out, if you just stop there, I feel like you're doing a disservice to yourself. And I know that's like so popular practice. My dogs are playing in my office right now.
That's all right. We love
Um,
dogs. Athena and Freya, we welcome the
yes,
goddesses always in any form.
always, even if they're fighting.
I mean, sometimes
Um,
the goddesses, have some issues with each other. You've read your mythology. Don't cross
yeah,
herons.
Exactly, and we're in 2 different pantheons here
That's
too. We've
right.
got Greek and Norse.
That's right. So already there's some issues.
Um, but I feel like the popular practice is you meditate and then you journal about it, and then you're good to go, um and for some people, that might be great, but I feel like it's doing it a service, at least to me, if I just stop there. It's like I've done, you know, 75% of the work, and then it's like, I'm done. I'm good." But taking it the next step of creating the art of that visual that you can see, whether it's a card or a piece of art that you hang on your wall or sit on your desk or whatever the case might be, you're, like you said, reminded of that thing, of that feeling of that work you did, and you're able to go further with that practice. And, if you're physically holding that, um, if you're physically holding that shadow,
Yes.
then you can come back to it. You can get comfortable with it over many times of looking at it. And you can also like have this practice of, okay, I'm taking the shadow on this piece of paper and I'm gonna set it over here and like be disconnected from it.
Mm.
So that's another great way to use that creativity of I can look at it, I can get comfortable, and also I can set it aside right now and still enjoy life over here.
I love that. And, I'm going to bring up something that our good friend Trisha has told me. She's Mama PhD. I love following her and her podcast with our other friend Jill, the In the Queue. Um, Love and Life in the Queue. It's a great podcast. Anyways, she and I have these great conversations, and it's so pertinent to what we're talking about, that separation of kind of the different parts of us. And um, for example, like, if, like you're always feeling like, oh, people are judging you or, or like, let's say, you feel like people are attacking you, you know what I mean? So like you name those parts of you like, oh, I'm feeling really attacked. That's Annie. Annie always feels attacked. Okay, attacked Annie. Um, I see that you're feeling attacked, but it's okay. Not everyone is attacking you, Annie. And you'll give her a hug and you say, thank you for being here and part of me, Annie. But you're going to need to take a ride in the back seat, and, higher self Crystal's going to step up front, and take the reins, or like, oh, I'm feeling judged. Judge Judy, get in the back seat, like Crystal's here, and you just can name your triggers and giving them like a funny name, and asking them, thanking them. First of all, don't shame them and say, oh, gosh, Annie, you're always feeling attacked. No, we understand why you feel attacked, Annie. You have been attacked in the past, but guess what? The past is not the future. And let's not bring this in, and so I really think that I like how you said you can take that card, acknowledge it, acknowledge the shadow and put it to the side. And I think that's like, again, with the naming, it's what you're doing. You're acknowledging it and then putting it to the side, because you can act from that space of calm.
I love that. I love the naming. And yeah, like once you have a name or like even have a conversation because now you have a thing sitting in front of you to have a conversation with, um you can feel that calm. And I remember in that shadow work workshop that we did, this was the card. So we've got like a orange block on a road with like a rainbow sky behind it. Oh, and I just noticed I have like gold stars in the
Oh,
sky.
those are beautiful.
Um yeah.
Same.
Um I remember doing creating that card in the workshop alongside you, and I remember like through the meditation, even through the writing, the energy in my body was just like really shaky, like really like I mean like my hands were physically shaking. And then once I got through that, like if I had ended at the writing, like, I still would have been shaky and very ungrounded. But by the time that I had finished making this card, I wasn't shaking anymore. Like I didn't feel that energy. I had come back to that grounded space.
That's amazing. Talking about the um, grounding yourself into that moment because it is so important. You can actually use different crystals as well. I found this really cool crystal, cassiterite. Now, this tiny, tiny thing, you wouldn't think that crystals could be so powerful, but it is. And I almost lost it right before Ash saw me. I was like, oh, I found it. And it was a piece of dirt. I was like, no, that's not it. And then I really found it, and it is a very cool, pyramid double pyramid shape. I don't pass it to right, and I'm gonna read about it. I love my crystal store. Shout out Healing Oaks Crystal in Simi Valley. They have these little cards that talk about exactly what it is. So listen to this. If you are into shadow work, a crystal, tiny, mighty but small, that you might like is called cassiterite. It is an extremely powerful crystal that aids the user in releasing energetic debris, past trauma, and breaking down old forms. It's a stone of transformation. Cassiterite resonates at the doorway of birth and death, formation and destruction, and is known to aid in shamanic journeying. It is a crystal of initiation, and it's used in meditation and can be useful in crossing the thresholds to the underworld. This crystal can be used for spiritual grounding, energizing, and connecting to source energy and facilitate the release of past trauma, letting go, and releasing old patterns. So, I mean, if any crystal says shadow work, this is it. Also, I mean, smoky quartz, labradorite, all those other things,
Yeah.
is very important. Um, so,
I love
uh,
that.
yeah, I don't know if there's any other crystals you use. Oh, I've got some multivite on. This is
Uh,
a crystal of
that
transformation,
one.
very strong. This is not for the weak of heart. This one might be a little bit more gentle if you're just getting started with your shadow work. But smoky quartz, moss agate, anything grounding, I love. Like for example, this is septarian stone. It's like I call it dragon's egg too because it looks like
Oh,
a back. This one's in the shape of a bear, of course, which also
I've
different
never heard
things
of that before.
really help you work through your shadow. You can just be open to who is calling you, to work. Vulture is very common for shadow work, and bear. Um, um, Anyways, those are what's coming to my mind at the moment.
Yeah, maybe I should finally finish my Vulture artwork that I started last year
Please do
because
because
Vulture was my guide for ages. Um, and
why?
definitely great for shadow work. Why?
Yes.
Um, because it's all about taking what people think is ugly and unseemly and shouldn't be looked at and turning into something beautiful.
So
Because vultures clean up
what?
certain things that people don't want to look at, and in return, the earth is um, reseeded and things start growing again.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I just love it. I love it. And again, it, is one of those where it just really, um, you know, it's so perfect. The image of vulture and how everybody thinks it's ugly, but you really have to look at it and it's part of the ecosystem. And like
Mhm.
people want to just live love and light, rainbow sunshine. And that's just not how the world is. Like, you have to acknowledge the shadow. You have to sit in it. You don't need to rush through it. You don't need to do it so you can be okay. Do it so you can be healed. No, you do it because that's what we do, just to accept and love all of us. It's not to get further, on the path or whatever it is. Where I don't think that's
Yeah.
should be the
And
main reason.
yeah, love and light culture, we'll call it, because love and light is great, but we'll say the love and light culture of only think about the love and the light you want, because if you think about other stuff, you'll manifest the other stuff too. It's very harmful. It was harmful to me, and I have no doubt I'm not the only one, because if we're just um, pushing the stuff that isn't considered love and light under the rug, then we're just being really harmful to ourselves. And it's a very toxic mindset to just ignore all the bad stuff and only focus on the good stuff and just be like, love and light. That's all you
Mhm.
need.
Absolutely.
That's just very toxic.
It is toxic positivity, man. I mean, I really,
Yeah.
the pendulum has gone too far. Like we just got to get it in the middle. Um, I wanted to bring up because we are talking about animal spirit guides. I have been very called to work with Dragonfly. Other people may as well. This candle is from Spirit Guide Apothecary. He makes the best candles. Each one comes with a little guide of how to work with them and some different things about them. And so Dragonfly is a master of light. It says, its iridescent magic connects us to other realms where transformation can occur. And that just again reminds me of that the other realms of the underworld, to
Yeah.
talk about journeying to the dark goddess, to our shadow selves. And you know, Hecate, is
Yeah.
one of the most well-known images of the dark goddess, three faces, I believe. I haven't worked too much with her,
Mhm.
although you have, and I have recently, like last night in the shower, been called to work with Hecate. She's like, so I am so curious to know, and as our listeners, am sure also to know who is Hecate. How will we know if she's calling to work with us? What does she have to do with the shadow? What can we do to work with her?
Yeah, so I I feel like I've been called to Hecate, and I know I say it differently. I've heard it pronounced both ways. It's okay. Um, I've been called to work with her for years, and she is the goddess of witchcraft, or one of many. She is guardian of doorways, so like opening doors to new places such as the underworld or new opportunities. She is also all about the crossroads. So
Mm.
if you're at a place where like I don't know which way to go, she's the one to call on to help guide your way. So especially if it is in that shadow work realm where you don't know what's going on, which way to go, Hecate is the one to work with to figure out which path is yours, which doorway you need to walk through, um, and help you through that transition.
I love that.
And Lilith is another one that I work with a lot from the underworld, because she rewrote her story.
Oh,
Like, she was told that she has to be, in this garden that's, like, too perfect, right? And that she was shamed for eating the apple, and there's the snake there, and, it funny story, if you don't mind my going off on a different
not at all.
different direction here. I had a dream about a tree with an apple with a green snake moving through the tree, and I forget what the snake said to me, but I had a dream about this, and the snake said something about transitions or something or other. And 3 days later, or maybe not even 3 days later, maybe the next day, I got the book. I'd ordered it before the dream, but the book arrived after the dream. That was, what is it called? I can't this is, like, my favorite book, why am I struggling? The Holy Wild, there we go. The
Oh,
Holy Wilds, by Daniel Daleski, and the first, like, whole section of it was about Lilith in the underworld, and she has the tree, she has the snake, she has the apple in that transition, and, going through seeing what was real because this beautiful garden was actually fake because it wasn't what she wanted. And she was demonized because she broke their rules. And so I've loved working with her too because of that story rewriting and following your path of what you want as opposed to what, society tells you you're supposed to have. And even if
Love
society demonizes you for it, it's okay because it's
Yeah.
not really about you.
I love that. I love that. Lilith, I've not worked with or heard that story either. Although I have heard a lot of people who do work with Lilith. So thank you for that. I love that.
Yeah.
Inanna is another one. Have you heard of
Mm.
her and her myth? Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
she's in that book too, for sure.
Cool. And she is one of the main, not main characters, but main ways that the author of The Journey to the Dark Goddess, I forget the author's name, I apologize. We'll drop the link to all these books and stuff in the comments, in the show notes. So check it out if you're interested in furthering your information here. But yeah, she really takes through the Anana myth, where she goes to meet, I think it's her sister is the Dark Goddess, but I think she realizes is really just another version of yourself that you're meeting, as you convene and sit with the dark goddess in the underworld. And we've talked a bit about the underworld, but for our listeners who might be a little apprehensive about going down there or, not sure, because there's a lot of myths. We're not saying, go down to hell, like this is not heaven and hell, type of thing, but the underworld realm it's so interesting because I've been connecting with it so much more recently. It's actually since I took um, the master class for the transparent oracle with Emily Carding. And she has the transparent tarot as well, which I just love, just love. Anyways, I think it's great for shadow work because you can really layer and see what's hiding underneath. But besides that,
That
in
deck
her
is so cool.
yes, it is cool. In her master class, she talked of 7 directions. So we normally call to the 4 directions, like when we're opening circle, right? You call to the 4 directions and, you know, with you can start different ways. As we found, Ash and I have different practices. She opens her circle in the north, which is so interesting to me because I open my circle in the um, so I'm gonna go with how I do it because that's how I learned. East is
Sure.
the beginning, and so you start with the east, and you open your circle and you say, I call in the guardians and watchtowers of the east, element of air, and you talk about what is air, thoughts, truth, justice, all those things, and then you turn and you go to the south and you say elements of fire, passion, creativity, etc. To the west, water, flow, ease, relationships. You call to the north, ground, earth, grounding, thanking for the abundance in this physical realm, right? So we got the 4 directions. Many people will stop and then say, my circle is now open because I've called to the 4 directions. However, 7 directions, 7. Now, I will say, I knew about 5 and I intuitively just did 5. So I called to the above. It seemed like there's 4 directions, but there's also above. There is God, source, the universe, angels, there's all that up there. And I also placed my higher self up there. I would call to my higher self up there. However, she also calls to the below, and you place your hands down. And in the below is the underworld. In the below is the shadow, is the dark goddess, is the ancestor, is the Fae, the realm of the Fae, the Hades, Persephone, Hecate, Hecate, Lilith, the dark goddesses, and none, all of that, your own personal shadow, but also the ancestors. I think that was huge to me that I'm also calling to the ancestors in the underworld. You know what I mean? To me, that support of them from down there was so powerful for me. And then so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Where's the 7th direction, you say? Within. And so you ground your higher self. Your higher self is not up there anymore. It's now within. And that was it's been so powerful to my practice. I cannot say. And so I just wanted to share that with everybody. It also makes me picture kind of like a Merkaba shape, like you have the 4 and then above and below within. So some sort of sacred
I
geometry
like
with
that.
around you. Um, so yeah, that's that I just had to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, I have been doing that for a while too, but I like the extra pieces you put in there of the underworlds being below too. I see it as like if you call in just the 4 directions, you're calling in like a circle, but you're not
Mm.
protected from the top of the circle or the bottom of the circle. Whereas if you call all 7, then you're like in a sphere of protection instead of just like an open circle.
I love that. And yeah, speaking of protection, that's something else I wanted to talk about with shadow work and with go into the underworld. Like you do want to put your protections, physical and emotional and energetic protections in place. You know, wear your evil eyes. Call in when you're calling in your ancestors. Say, I'm calling in those that have my highest and best interest. You know, we're not calling in all the ancestors who might want to do use their bidding. No, no, no. We're calling in the ones that are for our highest good here, you know? And also, please, please be aware of your own mental state when you go into the shadow work. If you are already on the edge, if you are having suicidal thoughts, tendencies, things of that sort, like please, please take care of yourself and your mental health as you dive into resurfacing traumatic events. And please get the support that you need. Know that there is always hotlines available. Know that there is our email address. If you need help, email us. If you have a
Yes,
trusted
please.
friend, if you have a trusted friend, you know, you know, also, in the journey to the dark goddess, in Inanna's myth, and this is thousands of years old, she had a Ninshabar that was her woman servant who she left at the first gate. And she said, I am going to the underworld. If I do not return in 3 days, she did not. Bang the drum and she had a plan. She had a backup plan for pulling herself out of the underworld. She had somebody who knew she was going into this. So please, all of our listeners, I'm getting chills right now. So this is important for somebody to hear. As you embark on this
Yes.
shadow work, please have a trusted person, therapist, whoever, know that you're doing this work and to check on you and make sure you're okay and return from the underworld, you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
safely.
that's definitely an important part because I mean it can get darker before it gets light, right? Like
Mhm.
and I've definitely had that where I've had therapist friends, counselor friends help me work through some of it. Like I've done the work and then I go talk to them.
Mhm.
And these days you can also get therapy online. Like you can even have a therapist that you can text or a video chat. So definitely, if you don't have a person in your life that you feel comfortable chatting with this about, find someone of that nature where you can just have someone to text to work through anything that's coming up that's too much for you at the time. And there's absolutely no shame in getting help from sources that know what they're doing, such as counselors, therapists, or um, anyone else in that realm.
Yeah. And we have actually a very good friend, Jessica Alejandro. Um, is that how you say your last name? I think so. Apologize if
Yeah.
it's not. And that she is a licensed certified therapist, but also a shamanic healer. And so she blends her 2 therapies. So you can find people out there or hit her up, because she's amazing. But like, you can find people out there that you might think like, because there are many therapists who you'll be like, yes, I dove into the underworld, and they'll be like, oh gosh, we need to commit her. Like, so don't go to those therapists. Maybe look at people who really understand the journey as well.
Yes, definitely figure out what therapists will be good for you. I had one locally that would like um smudge the office first, and she was raised in those traditions, so that was fine. But like she would do that first and then we would talk, which was very grounding. And that was even before I dove into my spiritual path. So that was like a little mini intro
I love
to
that.
that path. But there are definitely people that will support all of your beliefs and all of who you are. So you just have
Yeah.
to find the right one for you.
Absolutely. And before we get off today, there's one more thing that I wanted to ask you about, and maybe I hope I'm not getting too far into what you were going to go in to for our meditation. Ash is going to create a shadow work meditation that will take you into some shadow work through a meditation, probably give you something to journal about, and then a creative prompt as well. So I hope I'm not ruining the surprise or anything that might be in the meditation. Definitely check out the show notes. The free meditation is down there for you to download. So go do the meditation and see what comes out of it because I'm so excited. I know I'm going to be doing it. And
Yeah.
so, but one question, and this comes from the shadow work workshop that I took with you, and something that was such a, again, a life changing practice for me that you brought up, I'd never heard of, um, is the posing the question of what is the worst thing that could happen, and like letting yourself acknowledge. I'm gonna let you talk on it, but you know what I'm talking about. That was the section that really, really touched my heart and soul, and I have brought with me in
Yeah.
multiple areas of my life.
Yeah. That was a really powerful thing that showed up that I learned that I have been using since then as well. And I'll be doing this meditation along with y'all because it's probably time for me to do another round of shadow work too. So the fear, so going to the worst possible outcome, like you already have this thought in your mind about whatever is triggering you, or whatever is coming up right now for your shadow. You already have the worst possible thing in your mind. Um, you have that. It's already with you. But you're doing everything to avoid it. So if your worst possible outcome is I don't know, you launch a product and no one buys it. Like the worst possible outcome is no one buys it. You've already got that in your body, so you're already living as though no one's bought your thing. So even though you're doing the things to, share the product and to be like, yes, I'm going to manifest, 1,000 sales and I'm doing all these things, you still have this mentality of no one's going to buy it. Like that's still part of your thought process, even though you're doing things that are going to work towards getting your sales. So if you already have that, if you're already living by that worst possible fear in your body, then you're not avoiding it at all. It's already there. It's already with you. So doing the shadow work, diving into, well, what happens if no one buys this thing? What happens if my worst fear comes true? That's when you're starting to unravel it and let it go and ease through that stress of what if no one buys this thing. Um, and that was a really powerful practice to be like, okay, if no one buys this thing and I'm already living in this fear, well, no one buys it. And we go on to do another thing. Or
Right.
we re-strategize, but like it's not the end of your life.
Mhm.
If no one buys the thing, like there can be something else. And so once you work through like all of the worst possible outcomes, you can start to release them. You can start to let your body relax, even when you're talking about it. And then that's when you stop living with those worst possible fears in your body, if that
It's
makes
so great. It's such a simple practice, but it really works. You just say, "Oh, I'm scared of this," and like, "Okay, I'm going to live it out. I'm going to instead of using all my energy to make sure that this doesn't happen, I'm just going to say, let it happen. And then I'm going to see that
yeah,
whatever it is not the end of the world. And now that I've realized that, I don't need to worry. And then those things don't happen because chances are 9 out of the 10 things you were worried about aren't actually going to happen in reality anyway, and then energetically you unblock it and maybe you'll get those sales that you were, you know, trying to avoid yet still giving energy to that, because what you give your intention to is what grows your energy. You know, and I just wanted to share a little of bit of my story of how I applied that to my life. You know, it was um it was really powerful. It was actually with my son. He's 10 and we got rear-ended. It wasn't bad. It was, we were stopped and they accidentally took their foot off the brake and, bumped us. But it shook him real hard. He had never really been in an accident before and it was a big bump, and I had to deal with, the guy in the insurance anyways. So afterwards, like he was still, upset. And so I was able to use this strategy with him, and I said, well, what's scaring you? What is the worst thing that could happen? And he said, well, if the accident was big, we could die. I could die, and then he said, actually, the worst thing would be if you died and I had to watch you die. And, like, God, I'm, like, getting emotional because that, like, broke my heart, like, that would be the worst thing, and that my poor baby is thinking this and worrying this and having that worry in his body, you know? And every time I get in the car, like, again, so this is a traumatic event that could then be triggering, but instead, let's work through the shadow. This is, I think, what's so important about it. Face that worst fear instead of saying, "Oh, death is ugly. I don't wanna talk to my 10-year-old about death, like, this is scary." Like, of course, I wanted to run the other way, but I don't know if it was recently we had done this workshop when that happened or if it just popped into my mind again, like, "Ash, worst case scenario, go to the end of it." And so I said, "That would be horrible, but let's think of what also would happen." So if you lost your mom, it would be sad. You would, or if I lost you, like I would be devastated, but like, because as a mother, that would be my worst fear too, is that if I lived and my son would die in the car accident, you know what I mean? So I was doing the work just as he was. So that would be awful. But do you know what? We would have to go on living because we still have your sister and your dad and there's other people who need us. And we would see the amount of love and support that our friends and our family would use to pick us up in our worst moment. And we can see the love that is there, And so we're able to, even in that worst moment, see what would the silver lining be? Would life be over? No, life would not be over. It would be sad. I would miss you like the whole rest of my life without you. I can't imagine. I don't want that to ever happen. But if it did, let's go to that worst case. If it did, we would still be okay. We'd be sad, and that's okay too, but we'd still be okay. And then it got into a really cool part of the conversation that would have never happened if we hadn't gone to that worst case scenario. I said, look, I've only known you for 10 years, but I know in my heart that I've known you for many lifetimes. We have been buddies. We have been friends. You've been my dad. Maybe we were brother and sister. You were a horse. You were my horse. Like whatever it was, we've had a lot of lifetimes together, buddy. This is not just a 10 years. This is way more than 10 years of our connection. And in this lifetime, I found you, and in every other lifetime, I will find you. So this is not the end. Even if we die in this lifetime and we are going through this pain, like it's again, go to the end. It's not the end. There's still other lifetimes. And then he said the cutest thing. He's like, okay, mommy, if you die, I want you to come back as a dog. And I'm going to look for you in the pet store and you've got to paw at the wall 3 times and then wag your tail and bark. And I'll know it's you and I'll pick you. And it was just the sweetest, um, you know, moment. And I'll hold that with me forever. And I'm going to remember in that next lifetime, if I die before him as a dog, I'm coming back because dogs got good luck. I know you're too. Mine as well, and so, I'd love to be his dog, So it just took that worst case scenario, something horrific, losing your child or your mother in a car accident, and what a beautiful moment came from looking that shadow, looking that darkness in the eye, facing that fear head on, going to the end of the road and saying, "What if that worst case happens?" And realizing that that no matter what, you're gonna be okay. And that everything does, I really believe, happen for a reason. We don't know what the reason is. We're not up there with our higher selves that see the trajectory of our life that he needed to lose his mother at a young age to become the person he was gonna be. We just don't know. We don't know. And so to put our views of I wish, I want, and so rigid, no, no, we need to be open. I want peace. I want happiness, like, and however that happens is going to be how it happens and look different for everyone. So I think that I love that practice. I'm so glad you shared it with me. And I'm so glad that we could share it with our listeners because I think that's why we see such a rise in suicide. I know we've talked about that a few times in this show. I don't know why it's coming up. And I'm wearing my You Are Enough sweatshirt, which I actually bought for Suicide Awareness Month. On the back of it, I
Mm,
forget what it says something about to the person standing in line behind me, you matter or something like that. Love the person
yeah.
in front of you. And I figure, yeah, I wear hoodies all the time. Why not, help someone out? So, anyways, I think that a rise in suicide is because that people think and feel, especially at young age, that whatever their situation is unchangeable, that it's not going to get better. And they have these fears that they're living with, and they're like just so scared that they're going to happen. Whereas if we could teach our children, if we could teach our adults, hey, let's, in your mind, live out that worst fear. Is it really as bad as you think it is? It's not, and you're going to be okay. And then maybe they won't make that decision that is so final. Whereas if they had just, breathe through it, like they can get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it, the world right now is so fast paced, especially with social media. So that's I I can't even believe you worked through that with a 10-year-old. That would be amazing if we all had like that kind of communication with kids, with our kids. Um, like I don't think I've ever went down that kind of space or line with my kids yet. But that's powerful. But I'll bring that back to um get the help you need to do that. So like if you want to do this but you're in a bad headspace right now, like do this with someone. So have someone asking you the questions and walking you through that process, whether it's a workshop or a therapist or a counselor or a friend. Um so that you can have that conversation and get from that worst fear to that space of like I'll find you again.
Absolutely.
um because that's very powerful and I'm still just I don't think I heard that story from you before, so I'm still just in awe of that.
Thank you. And thank you because it was all because of you and your workshop. And that's what I mean as far as like and exactly reiterating what you said. If you need the help, if you need the guidance, like I am well versed in it, but every workshop I took from you, the one I'm in with Kristen, that Hello Sunshine 212, she, is posing questions and making me think things that I wouldn't have gotten to on my own. The books, everything, do you need any of it? No, you can absolutely do it all on your own. However, a little bit of guidance is always helpful, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It is. Like I was saying, the world is so fast paced and there's so much out there that if you make like a snap decision, like sometimes that's too fast. Like if you just waited a day.
Yes,
Um and so having a friend or a counselor or whatever, someone to do this work with, it can help get all the extra noise out of your head where you're just focusing on this, one-to-one conversation, to slow down, to process it, and to work through it, and to, not let all the outside chaos and noise get in your head with it.
absolutely. Absolutely. This has been such a powerful episode, and I am so thankful to share this space with you, all of our listeners. Again, our whole goal here is to create a safe, sacred space to explore all of these topics. Some will be more fun. And, like we're looking forward to, upcoming episodes about moon manifestation, what to do on the full moon, what to do on the new moon, and things of that sort. But there's also going to be some deep dives into tough topics like this one. So I'm so glad that our listeners are along for the ride, and I hope they enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to do this today. And if anyone listening has questions or comments, you can reach us at our Gmail account. It's magicallifepod@gmail.com. We'll have that in the show notes as well. And until next time,
Thank you.
bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Your Magical Life. We hope you enjoyed it. Drop a comment and let us know what you liked and what you'd like to see more of.
We love hearing from our listeners and featuring your most requested topics in our Q&A section. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and don't forget to check the show notes for bonus content.
Send us your stories, questions, and comments to magicallifepod@gmail.com.
And we'll see you next time as we continue to explore, create, and manifest more magic into our daily lives.
Until then, I'm Crystal.
And I'm Ash. Take care and keep making magic.